You are listening to Rouge Radio, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
It's time to get the point as Rouge Radio is ready to kick off.
Ready!
The best football talk with the best in the business.
So what is the cost? You have 2 first-round picks this year because the Argos are dumb enough to trade for Drew Willie.
A few rookies.
We go directly to the on-field product. We welcome to the show the 20th overall pick in this past Sunday's CFL draft, DeAndre Wright of the Alouettes. DeAndre, welcome to the show.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.
And the occasional Hall of Famer.
Please welcome Doug Brown, who is one of the members of the current class of 2016 in the CFL Hall of Fame. Doug, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, guys, for the kind words and for having me on the program.
Rouge Radio is on the air. Here's your hosts, Robert Dalton and Tony Allen.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Rouge Radio podcast, powered by the Canadian Football Podcast Network. This is episode 360. This is a great milestone. And I myself, Mr. Robert Dalton, have suffered I shouldn't say even suffered. What is suffered? I've achieved a great milestone earlier today with my good friend Tony Allen as we celebrated 5 years of friendship on Facebook. Tony, how's everything today?
Oh, it is fantastic. How little did I know 5 years ago that we are basically, our lives would become this intertwined.
Yeah, I know. If everybody has any doubts, or I guess, well, not really anybody would tune into our Facebook conversations, but if Tony, if you had very little doubts, if you're second guessing yourself, how long have you been on this podcast? You can look no further than Facebook to determine that. Well, unless you became friends with me before you were on the podcast, but I don't know how that would have happened, but
no, and I was did we become friends immediately?
I'm just kind of curious. How did it happen? Did we just jump on the show and then we became friends, or what have you? But
yeah, I don't know how long. I don't know how long afterwards we became friends or not. But
we've just lost a couple of listeners. How's everything? Nobody cares about our friend life. No. How's life within the last couple of days?
It's been pretty good. A lot of exciting things going on in life. I'm getting ready to go back to school. I don't know how much we talk about our personal lives, but really quickly, about 4 years ago maybe, I left my radio career and became an electrician, and now it's time for me to go back to school once a year. After about 1,500 hours, I'm supposed to go back to school and achieve my next level of electrician till I get up to a journeyman. So from a personal, exciting standpoint, that is my next step.
Oh, looking forward to it. I myself have finished yesterday 9 days in a row working, and it burnt me out as much as I can, or as much as possible. And if anybody cares, I mean, we're only recording an hour earlier. We're not recording a day earlier, but I mean, this is recording earlier than we normally do, and because I want to get to bed as early as possible. I am just, if anybody tries to convince me to work any day, like a huge amount of days in a row, just shoot me. I'm not going to do it. I'm not ready for it. Whoever thought that was a great idea used to be shot. Anyway, we got a great show. We've got our 3 down hot takes. Of course, we go into week 16 of the CFL season. And, of course, Tony's got his magnificent bastard. I'm bringing in our WTF. And of course, a huge fan favorite, our mystery deck. But first, let's get into our 3 down hot takes. And this is brought to you by cjan.ca. Enter the promo code Rouge in cjan.ca and any sports venue across Canada in Canadian funds. You can enter the promo code Rouge, for discounts on those particular tickets. And the first down hot take.
Like he had some instructions for Hiralahu. Is he just going to punt it here?
No way.
I think so.
Really? They don't want to. Wow. This guy's been money from long distance.
Doesn't want to risk a block here.
Wow.
It's like the triple header Sunday. It was like everything was happening. Everything was good. You had a good football game. I can't even remember what was the first game. It felt like so long ago. Edmonton and Ottawa. There it is. Saskatchewan and Toronto. Ending in the last second field goal. And then Hamilton and BC, and it all seemed like Hamilton was getting away with it. And then June Jones says, hey, we're at the 43-yard line. Let's punt for a single. So what happens is they get the single. They're up by 8. and Hamilton's defense just completely bends over. So the question here is, will the decision to go for a punt single as opposed to a field goal go down as the biggest coaching gaffe in CFL history, Tony?
Not even close. Not even close. It was not a bright one. It was a little short-sighted, but if it had been any other team, actually, no, I shouldn't say that. That's unfair to say that, but it was a tactical move on his part. It was the wrong one. I would not have tried for it. But the problem is you only had about 55 seconds left on the clock when the play happened. So you put yourself in the lead, whatever. You didn't do it the most tactful way. You didn't do it the most confident way. But at the end of the day, this is what everyone hates the Rouge for. Oh, my God, someone will kick the Rouge and win a football game. So after about 100 years, someone was going to finally do it. And with 55 seconds left, they got to go the whole field. Just stop them. Just stop your defense. This is where you say, defense, I have confidence in you. You need to do this. It's only 55 seconds. Stop them. And they couldn't do that. So although the coaching play was wrong, everything after that should not have been as difficult as the Hamilton Tiger Cats made it look, or even close to how horrible it is. 2 Hail Marys on one drive. Most teams, if they're desperate on a third down, resort to a Hail Mary and a pass in for interference. But BC got 2 of them on the same drive, and then on top of it, a 2-point conversion to send it to overtime. The choice to kick the single was wrong, but not being able to stop a team for one drive at the end of a football game to avoid them getting 8 points, that was absolute failure. And that's where the Tiger Cats should look back on that game and say, we lost it because we let them go the entire length of the field, successfully pull off 2 Hail Marys and a 2-point conversion. The June Jones decision did not lose them that football game. It was not the brightest decision and not the most secure way to end a game. But my God, you should be able to say to your defense, you just need one more stop.
So we know your take on this one. June Jones came out, I think in the post-game, said that he didn't have that much trust in his kicker to making that field goal, and that's why he went for the punt single. So this is your only free agent that you brought in, and granted he was 3 for 5 that game, and his misses were from 42 yards each. However, this is the reason why you went out and got him, is for this particular reason. So I mean, I know your take. So does this mean that, just should the Hamilton Tiger Cats go looking for a new kicker then? Because that, to me, that's what it's saying. It's like, hey, I made this stupid decision because I can't trust the one guy we paid a lot of money to bring in. I mean, to me, that says a lot.
Well, it probably does. It isn't exactly the best pat on the back to what you've gone out and spend your money for. But at the end of the day, you got your point, you got your lead. And again, I'm going to reiterate, this was not the best play in the world. It was not the best option for the Tiger Cats to be doing at that time. But you know what? With the game on the line and the Tiger Cats needing the points to secure their place in the East, as wrong as it was his decision to go that route. And they led. I mean, that's it. They led by enough points. Again, not pretty, but they did what they need to. And at the end of the day, to me, the blame still goes on the defense. You can nitpick that play because it was so bad, but it certainly didn't cost them points. It didn't take points off the board. It didn't maximize points, but it didn't take the points off the board, and it didn't leave them short of their goal. So at the end of the day, I'll put it up on the dumb plays, but it definitely was not the worst play or the reason the Tiger Cats lost that football game.
All right, so as we go from one take and keeping with the BC Lions, a couple of weeks ago we wrote off the BC Lions. So the hot take here, and our good friend Brian Marushin from the BC Lions Den podcast, jokingly said that we don't know what we're talking about. So the question is, are the BC Lions big fans or listeners of the Rouge Radio podcast and use our voices for bulletin board material? And that is the sole reason that they've turned this ship around. Now, granted, they're fourth place if everything stays the way that they are, and they lose about the same amount as Winnipeg does. Winnipeg does have the tiebreaker, but they seem to be on a hotter streak than Winnipeg is. So, are we the reason? Should we take responsibility for the BC Lions turnaround?
Jokingly, we shouldn't be proud of being the reason that they're doing so well, but you know what? Given the circumstances of the time, and let's say hypothetically we were the billboard material for the BC Lions, you know what? If I could go back then with the information we had and my belief that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers weren't going to tank at the level they are tanking this season, I probably still would have made the same comment, because in the moment, the way they lost that game to the Saskatchewan Roughriders, it certainly felt like there's just no win for the BC Lions. Nothing they can do. But this last spurt of games has been great, and, it just adds to that drama in the West Division. And then they go out, and I think the move they say they made today to pick up Sutton out of Montreal was definitely a sign that BC said, listen, we aren't the joke that Rouge Radio made us out to be. And now that we're close to getting this, let's go out and really take a serious run at this. So, I mean, hands down, that BC Tiger Cats game in so far this season is my game of the year. Obviously, it's probably influenced by the fact that it goes to overtime. And I'll have to say right now, I forget the player's name. I tweeted it out, and if I could have a reverse magnificent bastard, I would have gave it to the Tiger Cats player who, with the tackle, great hustle to come back and stop the missed field goal return for a touchdown that would have ended the football game that way. That would have just been so epic for how BC had come back in that football game. It would have just been the perfect ending, that missed field goal and run all the way back in an overtime. I don't think I've ever seen it. I'm not sure. Maybe Dalt's here more of the history guy than I am. You might remember a little bit better, because sometimes I have the memory of a goldfish, so I don't always remember if a missed field goal or interception has gone back for a touchdown to win an overtime game. But that would have just been epic way for BC to win that football game.
We've actually talked about this on the podcast. The last time that something like that did happen, it happened in Winnipeg. The BC Lions with Casey Printers as their quarterback. In the second mini game, Casey Printers looks to the outside, throws it. I can't remember who the receiver was, but Dion Beasley takes it for a pick six to win the game. So in overtime, you would think the winning touchdown, obviously the team would win by 7. No, instead, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers actually ended up winning by 12, I believe, that game. So that was the infamous game that Alex Brink started and stunk it up, and Stephen Giles had to come in the latter stages of the third quarter to come from behind win. I mean, to me, it was just kind of like, I'd love to say that, hey, our show is the catalyst for this turnaround. But then again, I'm a Bomber fan, so I kind of like, hey, listen, just stay away from me. But no, I mean, hey, if the BC Lions just want to take a listen and give us a couple of hits and put that on their bulletin board, and if Jonathan Jennings wants to take a couple hits at our past episode, hey, there's some bulletin board material there, because we've broken bad on him on quite a few occasions. Let's go to the third down hot take. And, I mean, it's not mathematically impossible, but for any, let's just say for assumption here that the Toronto Argonauts and the Montreal Alouettes are done like dinner. They're gone. They're mathematically almost eliminated from the postseason contention. So then we ask the question is, what's next? Tony, we're going to take each team. So, Tony, you're going to take the Argonauts. What's next for the Argonauts?
Yeah, I don't want to take this too far, because honestly, this could be our whole 9 teams in 9 weeks kind of research thing. But at the end of the day, I would probably just say to the Toronto Argonauts, move on from Ricky Ray. I think you've got a very good prospect quarterback there. in McLeod, Bethel, Thompson, you might as well nurture this now, because as we've noticed in the last couple of years, a new wave of quarterback doesn't seem to be coming in as regularly as we'd like, and they have one there that they should work. So I think their first order of business would be to move on from Ricky Ray. Sit down with Ricky, decide what he wants to do, what course of action, maybe move to the front office, maybe move to the sideline. I don't know what it is, but they need to deal with the Ricky Ray situation, because I don't think there's any way he comes back next year. And I think that should be the first door that they close as we come to the end of 2018, is to just let everybody know what the future of Ricky Ray is, because Bethel Thompson, I think, is your future going forward, unless you find something at some sort of winter camp or some camp around the States. That is the direction to go. They need to build that team around him. Then they need to decide what they're going to do with Deron Carter, if he's going to stay and be part of the fold, and then, just add pieces after that. I think this is a Toronto Argonauts team that has played very exciting football games. I didn't send out the tweet, but I wanted to, and then whatever, the football games got good and I missed it. But the one thing I will say about the Toronto Argonauts, they did not win a lot of football games, but damn, it seemed like if there was an exciting football game, if the Toronto Argonauts weren't the other team in it, whether they were winning or losing, damned if they didn't play some good football games and didn't come out on the winning end. So I think Toronto is close, and that would be the best thing to do. Don't leave any questions. Don't leave any quarterback controversies. Deal with Ricky Ray, wrap up his career. And then as you go into your drafting and your free agency season, think about what places you really want to focus on, what you're going to do with James Wilder Jr. as that doesn't become a mess again in the off season, wherever he wants to go or whatever he wants to do. And I think that there could be a pretty bright future for the Toronto Argonauts in the next couple of years.
I'm going to take on the Montreal Alouettes here, and I'm going to play fantasy GM as if I was playing Madden on the PS4, because the Montreal Alouettes management has kind of managed themselves away from a future. They're without a first-round pick for the next couple of years. They traded Terrell Sutton for a second-round pick, so they got that for them next year. With that being said, Johnny Manziel is not the answer for the future. He may be a stopgap until they figure things out. They've got some receivers that aren't capable of being top-tier receivers, and they're pending free agents right now. So what I would do is that let's just cut everything off, right? You've got Ernest Jackson, pending free agent. Trade him for whatever you can get him. Who's another receiver that they've got there? Darius Bowman. Trade him for what you can. You actually traded an 8th round pick to Winnipeg for him. Trade him. Just get whatever you can from these guys. You've got a very good running back right now behind Terrell Sutton after you get him in William Stanback. I think he's a reliable running back. And those that you can those are a dime a dozen. You don't have to worry about long term for that. You've got some very great receivers in Eugene Lewis and B.J. Cunningham. Now, B.J. Cunningham, I believe, is a free agent, so he may trade him to get something and then try to sign him in the off season as a free agent. A lot of things that you have to take into consideration is that, and you mentioned this with McLeod Bethel Thompson, 7 of the 9 current starting quarterbacks are going to be going into next season as free agents. Jonathan Jennings, free agent. Mike Riley, Bo Levi Mitchell, Trevor Harris. I'm just drawing a blank here. All but Matt Nichols and Jeremiah Mazzoli are not locked in for next year. So there's going to be a lot of dominoes to fall. Now, we can all argue that Mike Riley is probably going to stay in Edmonton, but again, that's a topic for a different show. When you're talking about the Montreal Alouettes, there's so many highly paid veterans, guys like Chip Cox, guys like Jonathan Bowman. You could get a lot of value. And then what you could do near the draft, if you're done getting your free agents, is that you could package up the lower packet and kind of move up as you will. I mean, I've done this countless times as fantasy GM in my season league when I'm playing PS4, and it works like wonders. Especially if it's considered a strong draft, you can do whatever you need to do to move up in the draft. And so right there, I mean, that's That's what you need to do. You've cut players because you're at the salary cap. And now it's time to move those highly paid veterans that you're definitely not going to bring them back next year. And there's no way that you can convince me, as highly skilled as they are, that you can convince me that Jonathan Bowman and Chip Cox are going to be worth their weight in their last couple of years next year in 2019. There is no way you can do to convince me that. So trade as many of your veterans that you can for any kind of draft picks that you get, and then when the draft comes up, just trade up with a bunch of picks that you have to get as many high picks as you possibly can, because you screwed yourself over with the first round for the foreseeable future. And that'll do it for our 3 Down Hot Takes, as that is sponsored by I was going to say 3 Down Nation. Sponsored by SeatGiants.ca. Enter the promo code Rouge for your discounts of any Canadian sporting events in your area. Let's get on to this week's Magnificent Bastard. Tony, who grabbed your attention this week?
Oh my God! Number 1! Seinfeld, you magnificent bastard!
It was out of the Ottawa game, and it caught my attention because with Ottawa looking for the win, especially a big game against Edmonton, it was a big competitor. At the very last play, Edmonton was going for the end zone. It was a free ball, and one player just jumped up, swatted the ball away, and the football game was over for the Ottawa Red Blacks. And I thought, he could easily have tried to play that ball. He could have tried to make a play on the ball, get a touchdown or get an interception, pad his stats, and been a real hero to wrap up the football game. But knowing the wins that Ottawa needed, and the fact that the game was all but secured, he batted the ball away. And to me, that is the kind of stuff that makes a team player. He didn't care about going for the INT. He didn't care about looking even more like a superstar than he was for getting the bat down and for ending the football game. I just thought, man, that is the stuff that catches my attention when I want to do a Magnificent Bastard. So for the selfless play, for the betterment of the team, it's just to bat the ball away, end the football game, and send Ottawa to the locker rooms with a win. So for you, Corey Tyndall, you magnificent bastard.
There we go. And we go to the opposite end of the spectrum here. On the field.
What the fuck is going on?
And in the second game of the triple header on Saturday, it was a back and forth game. Saskatchewan was up 10-0, I believe, and Toronto came back, and at one point I think they were up in the game. But somewhere, and I think it was in the third quarter. Now, we've all seen defensive backs take penalties, pass interference, and then sometimes if you're a very good receiver, i.e. Brian Burnham, you'll come up with a circus-like catch. And we've seen that in the past. You know, maybe guys like Darvin Adams or Naaman Roosevelt. No, what happened here is, I can't remember who the receiver was, and I think it might have been Shaq Evans. I could be wrong. Someone's going to point me out on this one. Marcus Robertson of the Toronto Argonauts rubs the receiver past the 5 yards, and obviously that's an illegal contact. So obviously he pulls him, he kind of holds on to him as the ball is coming out. So what does he do? He stops. Shaq Evans was illegal contacted, and I believe that's a terminology that I'm going to pen here. Illegal contacted, and he was still wide open. He was a good 7.5, 10 yards. And if you're going to cheat, at least make the guy work for it. Marcus Robertson, WTF, my man. WTF. Come on. Come on, man. All right. I got that off my chest. I was kind of hoping that I wouldn't forget that, but man, oh man, that just kind of, when I saw that, if you're going to cheat, just at least make him pay. You don't leave the guy wide open. All right, so this week I see my tweet notifications going through the roof, so that means that Tony has tweeted out this week's mystery deck. Tony, what do you got for me?
All right. I even tried to make the difficulty level increased on Twitter by only giving out the year, the team, position, and games played. So I had no other information to go on, although maybe next week we'll knock off the position too to make it a little bit more difficult because, again, Fake Gainer got it immediately, which makes me think Fake Gainer is that good or there's some cheating going on. But I'll give him her the benefit of the doubt on this one. So 2009 to 2011 in Montreal, 2012 to 2014 in Saskatchewan. 2 teams, 6 years. Go.
Okay, so I was going to say Paul Woldou. Woldou was, I don't think he got to Saskatchewan until 2013, but I could be wrong. I was going to say Jamal Richardson, but he started his career in Saskatchewan. To me, I remember the 2011 Montreal Alouette team, and a lot of them were actually shipped out when, what's his... No, Trestman was still there. Never mind. Trestman actually shipped out a lot of his players after the 2011 season. I am going to have to go with Diamond Ferry.
That would be an excellent go-to.
No,
you are correct.
I'm correct. Yeah,
you are correct.
All right. Anybody? So other than Fake Gainer, who else got it?
We got one more. Dylan Beno. Right. Dylan B at Dylan B got it correct. I think it's funny too that the first thing you said was Paul Woldou because Fake Gainer even says I was debating Paul Woldou, but no, I'm locking in Diamond Ferry. So that was funny. You're both thinking the same, thinking along the same lines.
And if anybody questions, I am not Fake Gainer. Fake Gainer and I have never been seen in the same room, but trust me, I am not Fake Gainer. All right, well, that'll wrap it up for this week's Mystery Deck. Hey, Tony, let's get on to this week's predictions, Week 16, and I believe this season. Hey, by the way, I got to bring something up. I mentioned earlier, in regarding to someone's going to point out my mistakes here. A couple of weeks ago, we brought up an Ottawa field goal kicker, and we mentioned his hot wife, but we couldn't remember. Kudos to Ottawa J, Janine Rashad, who's been on the program many times, who called us out on it, saying it's Delbert Alvarado, and we knew that it was an odd name. So for whatever reason, I couldn't remember why we couldn't think of that name. But hey, let's get on to our Week 16 predictions. And this week starts off in Calgary on Friday Night Football. The Toronto Argonauts coming off that heartbreaking loss to take on the Calgary Stampeders. Tony, I'll let you start up with this one. Where do you think this one's going?
I think it's going to go in favor of the Calgary Stampeders, just being at home, just Toronto kind of dealing with the idea that the playoffs aren't going to happen for them this year. And started thinking about 2019. It actually, for some reason, it's so weird to think of the year 2019 when I think how old I am. And when I remember when it was like just the 80s and I was thinking about we're changing decades to the 90s. But either way, little kind of rambled off there for a second, got distracted. But as far as the football game, I don't think there's too much storylines to bring to this one. Calgary's got some answers at the receiving core that hopefully get answered. I'm not sure if Eric Rogers returns this week. I've heard some rumblings, but I haven't stayed on top of it to hear if he was officially going to play in the game, which would be huge for the Calgary Stampeders. And this is just going to be a chance for the Calgary Stampeders to play focused, to remain focused, to know what the goal is. This will be a very easy game for the Stampeders to look past and think this is 2 more points. A win or a tie will lock up a playoff spot for the Calgary for the Stampeders this weekend. So that will be their extra motivating factor. They will want to clinch this thing as soon as possible. So I take the Stampeders 31-14.
I'm going to make my prediction on this one very short because I don't think it really matters if Eric Rogers is going to be back or not or healthy. I mean, you've been on record saying that the worst enemy for the Calgary's offense is themselves. And that might be true. And then sometimes when that happens, you better hope that your opposing defense is not going to be that good. And I look at Toronto, their defense isn't that good. I mean, it leaves a lot to be desired, and I think this may not be the cure of what ails Calgary's offense. But to be honest with you, I mean, if you're going to have a bad game, this is probably one of those games where you're going to have a very bad or worst game of this season so far. I think Calgary's going to make this one look ugly, but they're still going to get the job done, 25-15. As we move on to Saturday doubleheader, and the second half of the back-to-back in Hamilton, Brandon Banks is back for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. As official, Manny Arsenault's season is done, so Brian Burnhams takes over as number one receiver for Jonathan Jennings. This one, I think that, BC hasn't been that great on the road. They've been excellent at home. I think Hamilton getting back Brandon Banks, June Jones learning this lesson. I think Liram Howard-Lahu probably has all that confidence. Maybe he has that shaky confidence in practice. He hit a 43-yard just to get it back in. At the end of the day, I think that BC, they need to be hitting the ground running. They're a very desperate team. They're going to make the playoffs, or at least that's the way that they're going. Hamilton's desperate. They do not want Toronto catching up with them, but they also have the inevitable task of trying to catch the Ottawa Redblacks, which at this rate probably doesn't look to be happening. But at this time, they want to solidify that that home playoff date in November. I think Hamilton takes this one just because the addition of Brandon Banks giving that extra target to Jeremiah Mazzoli. John White was a good on the ground, and I expect him to even be better at home. So Hamilton takes this one, 25-18. Tony.
Yeah, I also like Hamilton in this one as a bounce-back game. They're at home now, and they are a good football team. Like I said, I don't think that June Jones derailed his team's season with the decision to not kick the field goal, and I don't think it's going to throw them off that much. It was a heartbreaking game to lose, but short memories, they'll get back on the field. And, BC, as exciting as it was to watch them come back and to work their way back into a playoff spot, I still find a very inconsistent team there, and I would like to give BC the benefit of the doubt. I'm not looking for a reason to not believe in the BC Lions, but there's still too much history there this season and the season before with that team. And right now, to consistently win week after week in a team like the Hamilton Tiger Cats on the road, I still want to take the Tiger Cats 28-14 in this game.
I just got a DM from Ed Hervey. He's listening to the show, and he's saying that he's going to use this portion of the podcast to put it in the locker room. So expect a BC Lions blowout if that happens. Next, the second half of the doubleheader, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers coming off that exciting win against Johnny Manziel last Friday, taking on the Edmonton Eskimos. Tony, where do you see this one going?
I see the Edmonton Eskimos taking this one. I don't, for the first time in 3 years, Daltz, I don't absolutely love the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the direction they're going, because they need to figure out where they're at right now. And I don't see a very stable team heading into the last couple weeks of the season. I see an Edmonton team that is definitely not happy with how they've performed. Mike Riley looks angry all the time. And I mean, anyone that wears those stupid hats should probably be angry all the time, but he does it, and he doesn't seem like he's liking football right now. And you watch him post game, you watch him on the sidelines, he just does not look like a guy that is loving football right now. He wants some wins. So maybe a close game. I'm going to take the Eskimos 23-21.
I love the fact that you're just like, every time we deal with their week preview for Edmonton, you got to break bad on Mike Riley. And then our Eskimo faithful will chime in saying, why do you hate Mike Riley so much?
How could you? I don't hate Mike Riley. His hats are dumb, but I think I've made it pretty clear how amazing Mike Riley is. Not a lot of people know that Mike Riley, actually, when he was in college, he created a heaven for dogs. And I'm not talking a sanctuary, like a literal ethereal plane for dogs' souls to go to, because he watched all dogs go to heaven and wasn't sure if there was a heaven for dogs. And when the little boy asked him, Mike Riley, if my dog dies, will it go to heaven? Mike Riley didn't know what to say. So he created a heaven for dogs. That's how good this guy is.
That's priceless. All right, end podcast right now on that note. No, I'm just going. Yeah. All right, so I think these teams, despite their record, are more even than they think. Edmonton's got the better receivers. They got the better quarterback. Winnipeg has the better offensive line. At this point, you're looking at the defensive stats. They actually probably look like to be a better defense, which is shocking to me. But I think this game's actually going to come down to time of possession and which offense can take advantage of it. And as well as I think it's going to come down to special teams. Winnipeg's their kick return game has just been falling flat for the last couple of weeks. In fact, it's actually been for the last couple of months. Edmonton, they've got Martese Jackson there, and I think that in itself is going to be the boost that Edmonton's going to need to get past. I think Winnipeg is going to have the lead for the majority, but I think they're going to lose it just based on special teams alone. That's going to be the difference maker. I think Edmonton takes this one 21-19, and then we can go back to the point of Tony has to ask everybody to explain Matt Nichols to you one more time. Just to throw, it's like Throwback Thursday. It's Thursday, something, when people listen to this, Throwback Thursday, hashtag explain Matt Nichols to Tony. Last game of the week, the Saskatchewan Roughriders take on the Montreal Alouettes in Percival Molson Stadium Sunday afternoon. And if you were sick of the NFL, you can tune into this game. The Riders will be without Naaman Roosevelt, expected to be Kenny Shaw to step in his place. Doesn't matter. I think the Saskatchewan Roughriders defense will outscore everybody because Johnny Football cannot read a defense. He learned how to protect the ball a little bit better. If not for a couple of dropped interceptions, that game against Winnipeg could have been a little bit uglier. I don't imagine Saskatchewan's defense is going to be that. It's going to let them to be that fortunate. So long story short, I think Saskatchewan's going to take this one, and it's going to make it a little bit uglier than it probably should be. I'm going to take this one 34-18 for the Riders. Tony.
Yes, 28-14 Saskatchewan Roughriders. There's not usually much reason to go too deep into it when it is the Montreal Alouettes, but I can see Manziel getting his first touchdown in the Canadian Football League, and that's about it. That's the excitement for them. Saskatchewan wins this one probably pretty easily.
All right, well, that'll wrap it up for episode 360. That was a great milestone. You can follow us on Twitter at Rouge Radio, myself at Rouge Dults, Tony at Tony Rouge Radio. And, of course, if you want, you can send us an email at thenewrouge@gmail.com. And if I'm not as sick as a dog next week, we'll dive in. We'll dive into more emails, but I am just sick right now, and I can't stand talking as I am right now. Tony, any final thoughts?
Oh, I don't know. My final thoughts is nothing. I have absolutely none of them. Oh. It was a good week of football last week, and hopefully here's another week of some good footballs. What are we down to now? 5 weeks left?
Yeah,
and the races are now starting. So get out there, support your football teams, enjoy week number 16 in the CFL.
Yeah, the man of few words. And we'll end episode 360 with a dad joke. Tony, are you ready?
Let's do it.
All right. My dad was very upset when our bunnies escaped. It's his worst fear. Hair loss.
Okay, that one's pretty good.
There we go. All right.
I will approve that one. That one's good.
For Tony on Dults, thanks for listening. And if I manage to get my hands on some Neocitrin, we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.